My name is Carmen Garcia and I proudly lead the team at Community Corporate. Our certified social enterprise has an amazing job in working with corporate partners and champions to change the lives of refugees through work. But our impact isn't possible without the support of our corporate champions that we have here with us today. It's about their commitment to work together to find solutions that are fit for purpose for their business and to help build an ecosystem of support around Australia's refugees. It's about kickstarting their careers here in Australia. So it is my pleasure to be your host at today's live webinar. From pilot to pipeline, we'll be discussing the evolution of refugee workforce initiative programs of inclusion across Australia's corporate leaders such as IKEA and Woolworths who are here with us today. Our panelists will unpack the challenges, opportunities, experiences, and outcomes of their initiatives in their respective companies and help you build your business case for how we can embed secure employment opportunities for refugees and asylum seekers. So let's meet the panel. We're really fortunate to be honoured with some established and expert panel members with us today. First of all, we have Harriet Pope. She is a refugee workforce inclusion leader at IKEA, a people and culture practitioner at heart. Leveraging her 12 years of experience at IKEA, Harriet is very passionate about inspiring and uniting diverse stakeholders in generating positive social change and has been at the helm in driving the IKEA refugee pilot since the beginning. We also have Catherine Hunter. Catherine is the General Manager for Inclusion at Woolworths Group. Known for her expertise and groundbreaking legendary initiatives in driving ESG, Catherine has a wealth of experience in social and environmental strategy, reconciliation, and human rights. She was the founding director and chairperson of the board for the UN Global Compact Network here in Australia. She now spearheads an exciting inclusion agenda at Australia's largest private employer, the Woolworths Group. Bringing in the academic and book smarts, we have Professor Bettina Skudlarik. She is the Deputy Dean of Research at the University of Sydney Business School. She works with stakeholders across all sectors to advance evidence-based solutions to sustainable and meaningful employment for people from a refugee background. She's led so many studies to help us all explore the benefits, and particularly for corporate Australia, to tap into this hidden pool of talent. And absolutely, my favourite person in the whole world who is with us on the panel today to share his own personal lived experience is Nawar Razouk. Thank you so much, Nawar, for joining us. Today, he is working at Tempe IKEA and been promoted into a role of business sales specialist. Originally from Aleppo in Syria, he arrived in Australia in April 2019. Nawar was actually one of our very first rock stars to join the first rotation of IKEA, and he's still with IKEA today. So he's got a lot of personal experience and knowledge that he can share. But before he came to Australia, he was working as a store manager for a shoe company back in Syria, and I think you were also doing a team leader role working in a restaurant back in Lebanon. He's been pursuing studies here in Australia around Certificate 2 in Retail and Community Services, and he loves the theatre, dance and events. So very, very exciting. Just so that you all know, listening in today, today's webinar will be recorded and you can get involved and share your comments or put your questions into the chat, and our panel will answer these questions after an initial discussion. For those of you that don't know, this week is Refugee Week and the theme is about finding freedom. For most of our refugees, the importance of work is so crucial to their successful settlement here in Australia. It's about feeling truly welcomed and finding that belonging. Work provides purpose, and it's a real key to unlocking an independence for refugees to kickstart their new life here in Australia. Like us, we share the same aspirations for ourselves, our families, and our communities, and this is why we all agree that work lies at the core of human dignity. But did you know, in the last 10 years, Australia has welcomed 160,000 refugees as at July 2022. And the survey data from the Australian Institute of Family Studies shows that only 6% of refugees are working in the first 6 months of arrival. And within 2 years of arrival, this is only 25% actually in work. And the 2021 census reported that nearly half of Australia's humanitarian entrants of working age are still not participating in the labour workforce. Like me, our panelists think this is not good enough and we can do better as a country. And this is why we're here to have today's conversation. We're so grateful for all of you for tuning in. So let's get started. Are you ready?
Let's go.
All right. Harriet, I'm going to throw to you first. So can you tell us why you're here today to share IKEA's journey in refugee employment and the inclusion with corporate Australia?
Thank you. Great introductions. So I guess, firstly, we're a purpose-led organisation. We firmly believe that employers have a really important role to play in opening their doors to people from refugee and asylum seeker backgrounds, to seeing their talent and potential, and to ultimately providing a platform where they can demonstrate their full capabilities. We think this is a true investment in every sense of the word. And today we would really like to unpack a little bit of the journey we've been on over the last 3 years, hoping that we can inspire further investment from corporate Australia and really making this as practical as we can for you so that you can sort of walk away with some idea of what your next steps might be. Thank you.
Amazing. So you've led the 3-year pilot at IKEA and now you intend to integrate and move it into a BAU model. Can you tell us what were the success factors that drove that decision as a global company?
Yes, thank you. That's a huge question, and I think probably best for me to start by just giving a bit of an overview as to what the program actually looks like. So we have made this investment in paid work placements for people from refugee and asylum seeker backgrounds in our business. So coming in and working with us for 2 months, part of the family, fully integrated and hired under temporary contracts under our enterprise agreement. And through this, we've seen some incredible benefits. But I think the key success factor for us is firstly our partnership with Community Corporate. We recognised early on that we are very proud of our range, but we're not experts in refugee employment per se. So we knew that we needed to enlist the support of people that are, in this case, Community Corporate. And really, I think together we've been able to co-design and implement a program that is perfect and fit for purpose for our business. Carmen and the team have really taken the time to understand the nature of our environment, the roles, and really importantly, our values. So taking a values-based approach to the recruitment of our potential participants, working with refugee communities in a really great way, and then providing 3 days of pre-employment training, which we have been told, and I'm sure Nawal will elaborate on that, how important that is for someone coming in who may not have worked in Australia before, really having a safe space to start to learn about the Australian workplace culture, to understand a bit about superannuation, the taxation system, things that we all take for granted but actually may be very new for someone who's recently arrived. And then the other side of things is, of course, the education piece within our business. So making sure that we are equally ready, working with our buddies who are very important confidants for participants coming into the program, who will really help them understand the unspoken rules. And Nawal might speak about that too, I think. You've got some very unique perspectives having been a buddy as well yourself. And for our managers, understanding what their responsibilities are and the commitment that is involved in having someone join your team for 2 months and the expectations around setting clear goals and delivering feedback. So there's quite a lot, I guess, there to start with, but we do, as I say, want to be really practical today with what we're speaking about. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, Nawal, you must feel very proud knowing that you were part of the very first rotation in this pilot, and your success, as we said at day 1 of training, your success will open the doors to more refugees and asylum seekers. And IKEA's announcement to make this program a permanent pillar of their recruitment strategy, you should be very proud of your contribution to that. And I think the audience would really love to know, what was your experience in the IKEA program? How did it help you overcome the challenges of breaking into work here in Australia?
That's a very important question to ask. When I first came to Australia and in the path of looking for jobs that took about mainly, let's say, a year, it was pretty, for me, I came to Australia, I thought Australia was going to be, very easy to find a job. Came here as a refugee. I was like, this country gave me my visa, so I'm in a new country. I knew how to speak English since day one of my arrival, and it was really difficult to find a job. I technically did not find a job until I got the job with IKEA through the Skills for Employment program, which was run by Community Corporate itself, and my job provider sent me to it. I had really, really good, pleasant experience through when we did that first few days. Like, they got trained us to go to IKEA. They even suggested to go give IKEA a visit, because I've never been at IKEA before, because I'm new here, because I don't even know how IKEA is. And I went, I did all that. It was really important. And after I come to IKEA, and after the first week of my employment, that was like paid employment there, just for those 2 months, I think, at the start. I think it was a 24-hour contract. And after the first week, my manager saw the potential in me and just gave me 60 hours, even if it's not on contract, but just gave me 60 hours to work with on my roster. And then after my first month finished, they gave me a permanent role. So it was really, really good and quick. Like, I did not think it would be that quick. But yes, I would say it was a very pleasant experience, and I would do it again if I had to, definitely.
Well, Nawar, I think you should take a lot of credit for that, because employers don't hand out extra hours if you're not working hard and doing a good job. So I think that, that says a lot about your work ethic and how reliable you were and how much they could count on you. Which, Bettina, probably takes me to some of the recent research that you've done, and you've talked to employers, and there is an appetite to hire refugees. We're not seeing so much of the result. What are the key findings? What can you share with us?
That's a very good question. So yes, I think in a nutshell, most employers these days, in terms of the idea of hiring someone from a refugee background, they are very open and they are very keen. But there is a massive gap between the intention and action. And the barriers are multiple. Some of them are very basic misconceptions. So I was taken by surprise that still, after everything and all the work we have done and corporations like you are doing, that many employers still believe that refugees need to be brought from overseas. That there was no awareness that there is such a broad, amazing talent pool here in Australia, keen, eager, and desperate to get jobs. So I think that was the first thing. The second element of what we found in the most research project is that they really don't know where to start. They don't know that there are amazing organizations out there that could help them. Some of them even industry specific. So they kind of feel like, well, where do I go? How do I start? How do I find such an amazing talent out there? So I think knowledge that there is such a broad range of support is something that the awareness is missing. Another thing which we also realized, which was interesting, is that most employers, it's really enough to have one person, one amazing person to take on that project. And that's what we've seen over and over again, that regardless of the size of the business, it always starts with one person. So if you are out there and you are considering and thinking, oh, I'm just one employee, what can I do? Many of the stories we heard from those employers who have hired refugees is that it really started with a bit of goodwill of one person who quite often wasn't in the leadership position. They did convince the leadership eventually, but that convincing was more evidence of amazing work delivered by refugee workforce. So yeah, I think there is a lot of misconceptions and fear of unknown, but the resources and support is out there. So it's just a matter of reaching out. I'm sure that after the today's session, we're going to post some of those resources and information.
Yes, absolutely. We will be sharing all the recent research studies and some employer guides that have been developed by Sydney Uni. And you're right, it's really frustrating when employers still say, but refugees don't have work rights. All humanitarian migrants coming to Australia do come with permanent residency and full work rights. You don't have to sponsor them. They are already part of Australia. So let me take you, Bettina, one more question for you. In terms of the research that you've seen in the broader corporate sector, you've also worked really closely in evaluating IKEA's pilot and also recently the Woolworths Group Refugee and Digital Tech Cadetships as we're going through that. Have you seen any key drivers or common principles across these two initiatives that have really supported this transition and business case into BAU?
I think there are several success factors. I think the research that was done by Dr. Priya Roy with IKEA showed that beyond, engaging the right partner, who, especially because you are having a very large-scale program, so that means that it's wonderful to have a partner that understands the business side of it. Because again, when we talk about refugee employment, I think that's the part which I find important. This is not a kind of charity, CSR focused only activity. It's really, while it is ticking some of those boxes of CSR goals, it's a business case. And I think the right organizations that supported your program, and in this case community corporate, understand that and start with this business case. What is that you need? How can I help you, rather than, oh, please hire someone? And I think that's an important set. Another thing which we are finding, with Woolworths, and we also found with IKEA, is the kind of openness of the workforce. And we know that also from employers who haven't hired people from refugee background, that there might be fear or resistance of again, mostly because people don't have any experience. And I think that the readiness of the workforce, the welcoming attitude, the whole idea of having someone like a buddy that you can talk to about what does it all mean, what was this acronym that someone just used, the type of silly questions that you don't get in a training, and the willingness of the workforce to engage, I think that's a really important part of the success model. And at the end of the day, I think another big major part for a large organization like yours is the alignment between your corporate strategy and what you're doing. I think employers who do it well are those who are committed to, into it for the right reasons. So there is the mind, the business case, and the heart, and the understanding that refugees have come from a context that might be very different than I came from, being a migrant myself. And that awareness, combining the two, I think is a massive success factor.
Yeah, thank you. Catherine, I'm going to throw to you, because Woolworths has also made a decision to embed the Refugee Employment Program into its BAU, and it's really integrating that cultural pillar into your inclusion agenda that you head up, which is very exciting. So can you tell the audience about how your program evolved and what were some of the drivers for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Carmen. And I would also like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and pay my respects to the ancestors and elders who cared for this country so beautifully and sustainably for millennia. Look, I think I've been with Woolworths almost 2 years, and so there's some wonderful people before me in 2017 who really kicked off the program with yourself, Carmen, and that was really in response to the Syrian refugee crisis. And I think one of the wonderful things about Woolworths is that as a group, we always front up when there's an issue or a crisis, because we recognise that not only part of our distinctive value is that we can provide employment opportunities, and to your point, the dignity of work is a basic human right, and our reach right across the country means that we can offer job opportunities for almost any skill set in almost any place around Australia. But I think, Harriet, you said it beautifully, we're also a purpose-led organisation, and so we have the ability and the great obligation, I think, but also the opportunity to contribute in ways that only we can, and only corporates or groups often can. So it was quite organic in some ways. We had some great success with the refugees we hired then. And then it really just organically started to build into our broader commitment to diversity and inclusion. We recognise that, as you say, we're the largest private employer in the country. We want to reflect our customer base in our team members throughout our store network, and also the broader group and all the different businesses that we work with. And so that's really important to us, that diversity is reflected amongst our team members as well. So as I say, it was quite organic, but also we made a very conscious decision when I joined a couple of years ago that we wanted to invest more deeply and more heavily into our diversity, equity and inclusion initiatives. And so cultural inclusion was an area that we really wanted to sort of start to focus on a lot more. And I think, as we know now, the latest census data has shown that, more than one half of Australians were either born overseas or have a parent that was born overseas. So, the demographic of this country is changing vastly. And so I also think there's a real responsibility and obligation upon us as a good corporate citizen, as such a large employer, that we really want to provide as many opportunities as we can and remove the barriers to access to joining our group, but to also thriving when they join, and then also having wonderful career pathways up and across the group.
Yeah, amazing. And you're right. I think sometimes people forget Australia was built on migration, and post-COVID recovery, migration is going to play a critical part. In fact, one of the recent evolutions that you've got is the new refugee digital tech cadetships. Do you want to touch a little bit about how the jobs at Woolworths for refugees are not just about stacking shelves, as important as that is, and filling out online orders from the CFC, but there are these career opportunities where you're leveraging software engineer skills and experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Data analysts and the like. Look, I think we all know that there's going to be a shortage of people with the right digital and technology qualifications. I think in New South Wales alone, we're looking at a shortfall of 10,000 people in the next few years. So, basically we decided we could tap into a previously untapped talent pool with the wonderful refugees that live in this country that have incredible experience and expertise. So we've actually just welcomed our second cohort of cadets, and they're working. The exciting thing too is that they're working in our team enablement or IT area, if you like, in our support office. Also WIC, which is our Woolies in Quantium, our data analytics business. And then also other parts of the ecosystem as well, such as Woolies X. So I think it's lovely that people get to know that there is so much more to the group than our stores, which is obviously the heart of our business. But what I was really excited about, Carmen, was that 2 of our cadets actually were working in stores. And so they put their hands up for these opportunities. So it created those internal career pathways. And we're looking at those internal career pathways for all of our team members. One of the fascinating things we did recently when we looked at exit interview data was that many people said that they would have stayed with the group or they would come back to the group if they saw there was another career opportunity, but those opportunities or pathways weren't always visible. So that's given us some wonderful insights to see how we can create more career pathways, not just for our refugee cadets, but actually for all of our team members across the group.
Yeah, absolutely. It is about how do we support the ambitions of all Australians, no matter what age or stage they're at. I think that's what purpose-led driven companies really want to do. You want to keep loyal people. I'm going to throw you one quick tough one, maybe just a frank and fearless, Catherine. We want to be honest. There's a lot of love here in the room, but in terms of like the practicality of recruitment in such a very large organisation like Woolworths, recruitment processes, how did that work with the refugee cohort? Did you find any challenges around that?
Yeah, look, we did. And I think just to give people a sense of the scale, I think we recruited something like almost 70,000 people last year. I mean, it is phenomenal when you look at the numbers, and that's across Australia and New Zealand. So look, I think, again, it's given us a wonderful opportunity to look at what are the structural barriers to people joining the group, but then also thriving and having those career pathways and opportunities. So, Noah, you mentioned acronyms or actually Tina, it might have been you, jargon. So we looked at all of our job ads. We tried to remove corporate jargon. Although we don't think of ourselves as a corporate per se, but jargons, acronyms, just keeping the language much simpler, being mindful that for anyone for whom English is not their first language, that some of those things might be a little bit off-putting. We also looked at some of our processes in terms of behavioural questions that we might typically ask candidates. We need to recognise in Australia, as in a lot of countries, that we have a Western style approach to those behavioural questions and the sort of responses that we look for. We don't often take into account cultural difference or religious difference. So again, we actually removed some of those questions and we relied very much on community corporate to do a lot of that validation of the skills and capabilities that we were looking for. And that's been hugely successful. And then another really interesting one too was in our customer fulfilment centres, where we require our team members to do a little bit of a sort of a health and safety assessment in terms of fitness. There were some instances where the men that were actually doing that interviewing, that testing, needed to put their hands on the candidates, which of course was entirely inappropriate for some of the women there. So, just really bringing a culturally sensitive and appropriate approach and understanding to everything that we do throughout that whole process has really improved the process, and the feedback we've been getting from our candidates and cadets has been really, really encouraging as well.
Yeah, I agree. And with IKEA and Woolworths in particular, you are leading this space, and it is about being open to those conversations and how we can challenge some of the traditional practices that we don't actually consider cultural considerations. We can't change everything, you know, global company here is a little bit harder than some, but we can have the conversation, and I think it is about that compromise and making sure it is fit for purpose for organisations. So, Harriet, from your perspective, with other employers and corporates tuning in to us today, what would you give as some of the best advice for them to get started if they're thinking about, you know, they have a good intent like Bettina talked about, but they're not yet taking action? What would you say to them?
Great question, and there are some really strong parallels here. It's fantastic, actually. I think about the inclusive design, just because we're on that topic right now, for sure. But also, I would like to, I guess, draw attention to the benefits that we've seen, because I think this really points to some underlying good advice, hopefully. And that is culturally, as you mentioned, we have, in terms of the diversity, we've now welcomed more than 160 people into our business. As of next week, we'll actually exceed our goal of 180 for the 3-year initial investment, the pilot, before we then take this next step into, you know, becoming business as usual, which we're super proud of. But within the last 3 years, we've seen 23 different cultural backgrounds come into the business. We have 40 languages, many of whom, our customers speak as well. I'm sure, Noah, you may have had opportunities along the way to converse with fellow Syrian customers, you know, in Arabic. So, which is, you know, incredibly impactful for us as a business. But we also see, you know, in terms of the engagement, the motivation, the loyalty, significantly lower turnover within this cohort, and a desire to grow with us, you know. Again, Noah is a fantastic example, and we have many others as well. So I think in terms of advice, you know, you don't need to do it all in a year, in 2 years, even in a few months. I think definitely starting small is something to consider. We started with a small group of 10 people. Noah was one of the originals. And we've just sort of grown slowly over time as we've become more accustomed to, you know, how this is going to work, and obviously working with community corporate around the country. And this has been something that's been important for us to be able to do it at scale and gradually roll out to all of our locations across the country. So, you know, 12 in total. I would think also, to Bettina's point, to be really thinking about how this aligns with your own people agenda, your cultural, your own values. I think probably as a starting point, there's some little bits of advice there, hopefully.
Yep, I think there's some good advice. Catherine, did you want to add anything?
Oh, it's all been said so beautifully. But yeah, look, we absolutely similarly, we see that all of our refugees have higher advocacy scores. They stay with us longer. What I think is, it's sort of like, there's this extra piece though. There's some sort of magic there, I think, that there's this incredible desire to add value. And, you know, many of our team members, of course, want to add value, but I just see that real drive. In fact, to the point where we sometimes have to sort of manage expectations to say it's okay, you can have time to sort of settle into the role, get to know the ropes, because from the day one, all of our refugee team members, as I say, just really want to, you know, add enormous value. So that sort of work ethic, that commitment, that energy, that curiosity, that drive to learn and add value is really exciting and wonderful to see.
100%.
Yeah.
And the trait that it's the attitude. It really is that, you know, you all talk about hire for attitude, and that's definitely something that we've seen come through. I'm going to throw it to you, Noah. Like, hearing what the employers are saying, how does that make you feel? Like, you know, and, you know, what would you be saying to employers? Like, this is different from some of the stories we had in the early days. People didn't even return your phone call when you applied for jobs, and you walk into somewhere like IKEA and you get treated in a really welcoming way. Like, how important is that for you to feel like Australia is now your home?
Well, yes, it's very, very important, I would say. When I came to IKEA and I was very welcomed by my team, I had a buddy, and I also had a whole team of buddies. Everyone was taking their part of teaching me, of everything, because also IKEA, like any other big business, they have a lot of tools, a lot of selling tools, a lot of logistics tools, a lot of warehousing tools, because I worked in the warehouse down in the self-serve area, and there was a lot to learn. And I would remember being just, not knowing how to use my device to find where the products are and to put them back where they are. This was literally what I started to do on my first job. And now I'm like an expert in every single selling tool that we have in our store. So yes, we as Catherine said, we really want to learn once we're there, because I showed them that interest. I was willing to learn. And then I remember Caitlin, which was my former manager, and she throwed me all those learning materials on our online learning programs that we have on IKEA, and just like whatever she sees, just send it to me, and gave me all this product knowledge and all this. It's really important for us to find secure jobs, because it's the most scary thing to do, especially because I was on settling payments when I just came, and I was afraid that I was like, if I got a job, if it didn't work, then I have to do all the paperwork again, and then I will back to that payment of settling, and we don't really want it. Like, we want to work, we want to get our own money and work hard for it. It's mainly what's our concerns. So I was very happy after my first months of employment. Didn't even take them the second month to give me my contract, like I said earlier, because that was like, now I'm assured I've got a permanent contract, which IKEA now has that on a normal basis. You start on a permanent contract. There's no such thing as like when I started before, which is, I think, very, very important for people like me. Yes.
Oh, amazing. Well, two quick things. Absolutely. I think one of the other key parts of both of the IKEA and Woolworths model is the long-term goal are permanent part-time or permanent full-time roles, because it's about stability, addressing the upheaval and the displacement of a refugee's journey. Giving that stability through work. A casualised workforce is not ideal. You can't plan, you can't budget, and these are things that we do. We tap into existing tools and services that both employers provide, as well as our coaching team. But the second thing is, can I just say on a personal note, I'm so proud that you just called yourself an expert at IKEA. Like, that is amazing to hear that you feel that way, that you've really learned something from that role, and it's seen through your promotion. So that makes me really proud to know you have that confidence as well, to say you are an expert in all things IKEA, I think you said. All right, Bettina, so listening to the panel, how does this resonate with some of the recommendations that you had? And I've seen the list of our people tuning in today, and there are a few SMEs on there thinking Woolworths and IKEA are huge. How could this work for a small or medium enterprise?
Great question. And I think even for large companies, we always recommend to start small. So you don't need to set up a large program, even if you are a big corporation. But starting small is a great point of departure, because you learn and overcome some of those potential biases that there might be within the organization or the systems. And the more you learn, the more natural it becomes, and the less kind of over-engineering you are getting into. So with many of the small and medium-sized enterprises, we really recommend to try to, again, tap, depending on the industry, to a different service provider, and tell them these are our business needs. This is what we are looking into. Have you got someone for us, and how can we work together? So I think for us, we always say, why is it so important to do it right and do it slow? Because I now know Noah from another event, and of course I know, as all of us here in this room, plenty of people from a refugee background, but many people around us know nothing. But at the same time, they are exposed, or they have been exposed to years of, some of them, mass media messaging that wasn't that positive. And so many of them are fearful or don't know much, and that initial point of contact becomes a reference point for the whole refugee community. Not just about we don't make judgment about one person. It's a natural kind of tendency of our brain that there we see a first person from a refugee background, and if that first interaction is positive, when we talk to employers, which is kind of entertaining, oh my goodness, love people from a refugee background and want to hire more. And I'm saying really funny, because they just saw one person, but if it's done well, there is this halo effect, and they want to hire more, and it has a very wide societal impact, because let's be honest about it, quite often workplaces is the first and maybe the only place when people can get someone who is culturally diverse than they are. And that first point of interaction, if it's a good one, again, translates into so much more than just opportunity for one person. Because these people will go home and they will tell her, I met Noah, he's amazing, and he told me about his experience getting a job. And I think, it's such a heartbreaking story that so many people like Noah are struggling. And in that dinner conversation, the partner will go and do the same in their organization. So I think, again, you don't need to start big at all. If you do, sure. And I would also recommend, if you do want to start big, talk to peers in the industry. I think it's really important because Harriet and Catherine are both very open to share the insights. But if you want to start small, one person at a time, it's all it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one thing the SME sector say to me is, we've only got one job, and one job does transform a life, right? And we all know this. But the other thing that I don't think SMEs realise is for many refugees that do have overseas qualifications and skills, they're actually more interested in pursuing their profession than a paycheck. So if they can get into their industry with an SME that they're really passionate about, that they've dedicated years to study for, they are going to pick that opportunity over a paycheck any day, because it is about purpose, I think, in my experience. Noah, I'm going to throw back to you because we're talking about culturally inclusive employers, and obviously we have two legends here with us today, but I'm sure there are many other employers out there that could be missing some opportunities by hiring refugees. What do you think? What would you say to them?
Well, there is, so as I said, we come from a pretty different place and we do things really differently. And sometimes it's really good for the business, sometimes it's not, because it's just different. And we bring more like work values and work ethics. Most refugees that I know of that came on, I think, visa 200 or 202 were outside of their home country, which meant they also were working where they live so they could afford life. So we never stop work. Like I've never stopped working. I've only not worked in Australia. Like that was the only time that I actually did not work. I was here. So in work-wise, wherever I went to work, I try to be good at my job because I do want to keep my job. Because I know businesses are really nice, IKEA is really good, I'm pretty sure Woolies is really great, but if you're at a job and you're not doing well at your job, you probably won't keep it because that's common sense. So most of us work that way in the best way they can, especially if we have something to prove. We bring our culture to work, and we show it off as well. So you could see in the first weeks, in the first months, how is that person working? How is they performing? What kind of thoughts they bring to the team? What kind of values they bring to the team? And it could be just, a plate of food on a break, and that could be really, really good for the team. Like, oh my God, that became a thing. And then every week, one of the team members started doing things. So that creates a better teamwork, a better team spirit, and builds a better business, I would say. So it's really important to have different cultures. And as I said, as Harriet said before, I do interact with a lot of Arabic-speaking customers that come to IKEA, because through our refugees, we came here and we have a lot of furniture to buy. And so they do come a lot to IKEA. So I do meet them and they don't really know how to speak English well. And I'm there for them. So businesses can have that as well, have more language spoken at their business. And you never know when you need them.
Yeah, Catherine.
I'm just going to comment on that. That's so beautiful when you said bring your culture to work. First of all, I just think it's credit to IKEA because you only feel comfortable doing that when you create that psychological and cultural safety in a workplace. And certainly at Woolworths, we've just seen, particularly in the last year, as we've started to really celebrate cultural days of significance. And of course, we're a food business, so you mentioned food. It's such a beautiful way. It's such a great equaliser with us all and great conversation starter, and it brings people together. But also too, I think that we've seen, one of my favourite days in our head office was Diwali last year, and we had, 400 plus team, come to the office that day, dress in traditional dress, share food. Recently, we had the most beautiful dinner, an iftar dinner where we broke fast together with over 160 team members. And these days are starting to just gain so much more momentum, and the richness they bring to our workplaces and the joy we get in that cross-cultural sharing is what, it's the best of a multicultural society in Australia. So I just think you said that so beautifully, and we are absolutely seeing that. With each day, they're getting bigger and bigger, and the learning and the curiosity is there, and it's just enriching our workplace.
So well said.
Yeah.
Completely
Bettina?
relatable.
As I'm listening to all these stories, like the one thought I have is, we know that Noah and many other people from a refugee background try to apply to countless amount of jobs with absolutely no response, because it's either the foreign name or the foreign credential or just the inability to actually respond to the jargon in a meaningful way. And we see it a lot with employers that on one hand they try to be inclusive, on the other hand their recruitment is everything but inclusive. And I think it's really time for employers to think what they are asking for when they search for a new job candidate. And do the requirements that they put out there are really necessary? Do people have to be able to talk about their job or actually do it? I could go on and on, but I think this is one of the key problems that people like Noah are facing, that despite the determination, work experience, talent, and in Noah's case, perfect English, it's our recruitment processes that make this simply impossible. So again, I would strongly encourage employers to rethink that. And there are few cases where we see that happening. I remember one of the employers whom we spoke to said, in my line of business, I'm so keen to hire someone from a refugee background. If they are new to this industry, they need to speak English because we need to train them. But actually, we have some senior roles in my domain that I know the way we train in Australia, it's not here anymore. We don't train this way. But people from other parts of the world, they still get training, technical training that we actually need. And you know what? I don't need them to speak English because they know what they are going to do. And I want to hear from employers that this realization that no, you don't have to be a native speaker to get a job, because you, again, we really need to change the system in how we hire people in this country, because otherwise, the shortage of talent, there is no shortage of talent. There is just no opportunity for the talent to be accepted.
I might just add one thing that I forgot to mention before on the recruitment side of things is that because one of the biggest barriers I hear is lack of local experience. How do you get local experience if you can't get that opportunity? So we actually now accept overseas and international references so that you don't have to have local references. And so there's some really simple things that companies can do, and that's large or small, to really help that along.
Yeah, Bettina's opened a can of, I'm going to come to you in a minute. I'm going to segue to you. See, this is what happens when you've just got a natural dialogue going on. I don't even need to facilitate anymore, but because I'm not going to harp on about recruitment processes, because that's my thing. But we do have a self-assessment tool that we will be putting online and sharing with employers in the future, and just being able to take that stock take about little things that you might take for granted in the language, in the imagery, in the hard requisite of Australian qualifications when you don't actually need them because they're not regulated. Like, these are little things that people can start thinking about now. But I think one of the things, going back to that safe place, that belonging, that celebration, is cultural confidence training. And you touched on this also, Bettina, around I'm a migrant, so I don't need cultural awareness training. So we at Community Corporate, we don't call it cultural awareness, because I kind of feel as a majority migrant nation, we should all be culturally aware. But what we don't always have is cultural confidence. How do we work effectively, support and encourage? And I know that's been a strong feature of IKEA's pilot around that cultural confidence. So you can weave in your comments into that segue. That would be great.
I can work with that, definitely. Just a couple of things on language firstly, or English in particular, I should say. I think what we've seen that people coming into the business, we normally would look for what we describe as confident conversational English. So a level at which they'll be able to, enjoy their experience with IKEA essentially. And people coming in with lower levels of confidence in English, we see exponential improvement over very short periods of time. So, a matter of weeks through those day-to-day constant interactions between fellow co-workers and customers. So I think that's something firstly to really think about. I also think about the benefits from a co-worker engagement perspective. So what this actually means for our buddies, many of whom are multicultural themselves, very diverse, managers, teams, in terms of the new mentorship skills and leadership and communication skills, which is something we get regular feedback on, I would say. And, you know, I remember being told by someone that they really felt that their sense of purpose in their day-to-day work was greatly enhanced by knowing they were having this extra impact every day working alongside, you know, another person from a refugee background in this case. And what was your question?
Well, cultural confidence, like, you know, it's really disappointing to me when I hear employers say, oh, it's not just unconscious bias, it's conscious bias. Like, being a bit provocative, I'm going to call it out. Conscious bias, racism, you know. So, you know, having cultural confidence is giving a safe place to all team members to ask the questions, to learn, grow, get outside their comfort zone, to feel confident. Yeah. That's been a real feature in your pilot.
And I think there is some natural, this is why it is so important, the cultural confidence training, because there can be some natural hesitation around not wanting to say the wrong thing. I don't want to sort of trigger prior trauma, etc. So this is why it is important to come together for at least 2 or 3 hours in our case and spend time understanding some things about the refugee journey, for instance, about the cultural backgrounds that our new co-workers are coming from, and equally during the pre-employment training for them to sort of understand the Australian workplace culture, because this is about people coming together. It's not about one party adjusting to the other exclusively. It's actually about that sort of mutual coming together and understanding. I think also, I think I'll end it there actually. Thank you.
Oh, that's okay. I'm just starting to look at some comments and chats coming through, because I think we're going to open it up for questions. So if you do have any questions for our panel, please put them into the chat. And before I hand to you, I do want to ask Nawar, you know, one more thing in terms of, you've touched on this a little bit, but just to really send that message home to people listening, like, how important is work for you to feel like you can really kickstart your new life here in Australia?
Well, I would say most of us have needs, and we go to work to earn money. And it was really important for me because I was fresh there in Australia. I had maybe about $500 in my pocket when I was here, after paying for my tickets and stuff. And I had a lot to do, a lot to buy. I wanted to move out of my house. I wanted to, you know, get a car. I had a brother he was still in Syria. Now he's not anymore. I was trying to get him here as well. So I still support him, and I had to support him. So it was just a lot of financial needs, and was being on welfare was not enough. So it was really important for me to find a job that's really secure. I'm not saying I have not done any kind of interviews before getting the job at IKEA, but I felt, as we say, they were dodgy. They were very not as the way I thought they are. So it's really important to feel, because like, we want to come here, we want to work, we usually stay for a long time, especially because I would say, on the subject that we're just talking about, my English became 10 times better when I came here than it was when right now. So I'm really happy that I've been at IKEA. My English became better, my confidence became better. I remember when I first started, it was just like, I don't know how to talk. I was coming to IKEA, I was very unconfident to talk about stuff. But now you'd see me in the store, walking around, just saying hi to literally everyone there, because that, working there for all that time, built a relationship with my work, and most of them are my friends now. So it's really important for us to kickstart our life with a career. And now I know where I am at IKEA. I know what I can get from IKEA. And it's still up to me always to stay or to get out, to explore other opportunities or explore internally. As IKEA is a really big company, there's heaps of opportunities around. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, great. All right. I'm going to ask you, Catherine, a question about diversity and inclusion. There's a big focus. There's a lot in there. Have there, and you head up inclusion agenda at Woolworths. So is there anything unique, or what are the kind of unique value proposition or benefits from a focus on a cultural pillar and refugees versus some of the other D&I areas?
Sure. Look, it's I never want to pick favourite child. I will say that. However, given the topic of the day, look, I think I said it before. You know, the demographic of our nation is changing so vastly. So you know, for retail businesses like ours, you know, it's so important to reflect our customer base in our team base internally. I mean, the beautiful conversations, Noah, you're talking about with customers, the ability to connect, to help them. Customers feel that sense of belonging in place, and therefore develop a sense of loyalty to the brand as well when they're there. You know, as society is changing so much, the demographics are changing so much, it's really important in terms of building a harmonious, cohesive society that we start to learn about other cultures. And it's such a beautiful way to do that in a workplace. Because you're getting to interact with people all the time. You're getting to learn about another culture that you might never get the opportunity to learn about, because that's not the community, your family, your immediate family or neighbours as well. So, you know, I just think that, you know, what I like to think that's come out of COVID is, you know, that it's given us that sense of global connectedness. Despite the fact that we're all different, we're all sort of connected by our shared humanity. And I think when we learn more about other cultures, other races, other ethnicities, I know it makes me a better person, I know it makes me a richer person, and in turn it makes our organisations richer and more cohesive. We just have to see at the moment around the world where there's war taking place, what happens when we don't have that social cohesion. And, you know, it can really start in the workplace, because we spend so much of our lives in our workplaces.
Yeah. Now, I think we could have expected this one. There's a question saying, how does Woolworths and IKEA measure success? So, Harriet, do you want to kick that one off?
So there's a number of different ways, and in fact when we embarked on creating our business case for the next sort of iteration, if you like, of our investment, so moving from these paid work placements now to stable ongoing contracts with IKEA through our refugee workforce and inclusion approach, we looked at things like brand trust around our employer value proposition, and just employer branding generally, not to mention things like turnover, of course, that we've spoken about, absenteeism, and all of this stacks up in an incredibly positive way when we look at this particular investment that we've made, which is why we describe it as an investment. So yeah, there are many measurables, and this is important when we're looking at these aspects of business, that we look at not only the qualitative but the quantitative data too. And of course that was all very much factored in, and that's why we're here today making this announcement and being able to, you know, continue this as part of our embedded BAU approach.
Great, Catherine.
Well, maybe a little bit more controversial in the sense that I don't think we necessarily set metrics or measures. We just wanted to embark upon this journey because we felt it was the right thing to do at the time. For us now, I guess, but to your point, I mean, we can track the advocacy and the retention rates, and those things are just wonderful because they are higher than the broader team community. I think with the digital cadetship, if I look at that in particular, which is still in pilot phase, you know, while we can't promise a permanent role to all of the cadets, we've to date had sort of an 80% success rate in offering a permanent role. So that for us is enormous success because we get wonderful people joining us, and in some instances, in fact, halfway through our second cohort, we want to offer someone a permanent role before they've even finished the cadetship because we could not find that particular skill set despite trying. So, you know, I think that we will probably start to put some more metrics around it. But more, I think, for a sense of how do we continually improve upon the program, and we've got a new target in mind that we want to hit as well. So part of that will be hitting the number, but I think for everyone there who knows, it's not just about hitting the number, it's are we creating meaningful careers for people?
Yeah, and if I can maybe add to the success as well, from Community Corporate's perspective, we've always said, you know, we don't necessarily need hard and fast KPIs. One of our values is quality, not quota. And for me, it's about a pull factor, not a push factor. So there aren't necessarily hard and fast targets in terms of success numbers. But when we see the natural organic appetite for the hiring managers, the local teams, the store manager to actually reach out and say, we want to engage in the refugee programs and initiatives that you've got, I feel like that is a measure of success because they're actually something they want to do and get involved in, and it demonstrates there is an inherent value. So for me, that's a high part of success, as well as the 89% average retention rate across the country at 12 months. But we are running out of time, so I will get the panel to make any final remarks before I'm going to throw to you, Noah. Any final comments from the panel, Bettina, Catherine, anyone?
Always. I would say that again, if you haven't started yet, today is the great day to start, and really reach out to an expert or an expert organization and have a conversation. It's really about learning more, and I think with employers that we work with, even if it didn't immediately resulted into a project or an employment path, it resulted into a lot of learning and the openness to do it again. What I also want to stress, if you have tried it before and you couldn't find the right candidate, try again. People are coming in all the time, and I think that's another big important part of the conversation, that just because back then you asked someone and there was no candidate for your company, it doesn't mean that there aren't 3 ready to start with you today. So again, it's not just about today, it's about an ongoing openness to tap into an amazing talent pool.
Yeah, look, just get started, jump in. Have a wonderful partner like Community Corporate if you can. And you just reminded me of one quick thing, Bettina, which is that if you don't have a permanent role for someone, you might be giving someone that local experience, because the local experience is often the barrier to getting employment. So don't worry if you can't necessarily give, but ideally make that work experience paid work experience. That's the right thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we've spoken a lot about so many positives, and this is really the takeout for today, but also equally it's okay to make mistakes. We don't all get it perfect all the time. It's about that long-term vision and investment and learning together as we go, having a partner, as you say, and working with your alumni. We have so many people now in our business, more than 100 people who have come through this program, who now have this really valuable perspective. Noah himself has been a buddy. There's a lot of power in that too. So yeah, work with the resources that you have, and they grow over time as the investment develops.
Yeah, thank you. So Noah, you do have a captive audience here with employers all across Australia, big and small, and so government and community partners listening in. What is your message to them, and particularly to employers, around what is your call to action from them today?
I would say that is, if you haven't done or hired through refugees, as they said, all of them said, reach out, ask questions. Community Corporate, I know they had help. They helped prepare me for my role before I even got to IKEA. And I went there and it was very quick. I felt like this is repetitive because I've already had it before. They communicated obviously with IKEA to get all those data and those learning materials before we start. And I would say inclusion is not just offering a job. It's about maybe empathy and offering a commitment towards each other for a job. And we're here, as I said before, we're here to work. We're here to offer more than we can. And it's worth to give a go, because a lot of companies already did, and they've seen that success, and we are here to share that success with all of you.
Great, thank you so much. I would like to thank all our guest speakers today, Harriet, Catherine, Bettina and Noah, for sharing your opinions, your learnings and all your experiences. We hope the insights from the panel do add value to your role in creating some innovative solutions that builds your own cultural inclusion agenda. So some next steps. Remember, you don't have to do this on your own, and as the panel said, you can start small. My team at Community Corporate are more than happy to help you tap into some of this hidden pool of talent. And when so many businesses are crying out with skill shortages, now really is the time to do it differently with meaning. I feel like now is the time to turn these conversations into commitments and harness the potential of migration and all the benefits they bring to the social, cultural and economic prosperity of this country. One job will make a difference, and I really want to echo what the panel members have said. It's about progress, not perfection. We are a multicultural nation. This is a conversation we need to continue, and I think Bettina has volunteered Catherine and Harriet, who's more than happy to speak to any of their corporate colleagues, because they are championing this cause. They want to influence the conversation. They want to create opportunities for all of us, and we're so grateful to be partnering with them all today. Today's video will be available on YouTube, and there'll be an email address at info@communitycorporate.com.au if you do want to reach out to us, and we'll send you an email with the links as well. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation on unleashing refugee talent. You too can take a step forward and be a pioneer of progress like IKEA, Woolworths and the University of Sydney, so that you too can send a strong message to our newest Australians that we value their contribution and that they are welcome here. So on behalf of Community Corporate, I really hope that together we can work with all of you to prove that doing good is really just good for business. Thank you so much.